Great. So I think what we do, we have quite a few folks from the public in the back row. So this is the time to comment on any non-agenda matter falling within the scope of the Integrated Water Resource Planning Committee. There will also be time for public comment in conjunction with each agenda item in which a formal recommendation or decision is being made, but you may only speak once per topic. Please note, the committee cannot take action on any item which does not appear on the agenda. All persons addressing the committee shall speak in a civil and courteous manner, and members of the audience shall be respectful of others. Please state your name and place of residence in an audible tone of voice for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. I'll now, anybody from the general community care to come up and make a statement, say hello? Seeing none, now we need to move along to the approval of minutes. So I think as parliamentary procedures or whatever requires, so I think that the TAC and PAC should independently move to approve their minutes, and then we'll join you guys formally as the WAC. Since PAC is alphabetically first, do I have a motion to approve the PAC minutes?
As submitted.
Thanks, Brooke. Any second?
I second.
Go ahead. Give the exact same response, and I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved unanimously. All right. Can I count on you, Tim?
I move to go ahead and approve the TAC meeting minutes as submitted.
Who's want a second? Second. Clayton Steele? All approved? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the TAC meeting, or the TAC, every meeting minutes are approved. So, as I mentioned before, we're now combining the TAC and the PAC into the larger Water Advisory Committee, or WAC. So that's why you're all here in the same room. I thought it would be helpful if we spent 10 or 15 minutes with being able to get to know each other a little bit better. So there's far worse games I can make you guys play. I'll tell you that. So I would like you, if you wouldn't mind, to find a partner who is on the other committee, and you're going to interview each other for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. Get their name, find out who they're representing, find out what their hidden talent is. If they refuse to divulge that, ask them who the most famous person they've ever met is. Then we'll reconvene here, and you will introduce your partner to the group. Does that sound fair? They'll be able to speak while you're introducing them, so be careful. All right, so everybody partner up, and we'll ask you guys to get the interviews going.
That sounds great. Okay. I was going to say,
Megan, I'm waiting. Yes. Yes, I'm Joe.
Yep. I'm
So I got to let you know. And Alan, you were a scientist.
I am part of the public advisory committee and also member of the
Here in 1975, when
All right, guys, let's maybe 2 more minutes.
I was gonna go.
Yeah, you travel.
Oh, that's totally makes sense. I just feel very happy.
You're in my.
That tracks for sure.
There's also That's part about it. Yeah, that is actually.
Do the same thing.
Surgery as well.
Do the same to the marriage of this was brought in.
Oh, okay. How did you get
Okay, my last name's Joyce.
We'll wait till you.
All right, maybe start winding down.
So, if you're interested in.
We're gonna need a brave volunteer to start. The good news about being the first one to start is you don't have any, you don't have any competition to fill it, so I find in these things that the more I keep talking, eventually people will stop, wrap up their conversations, and I actually saw Beth.
Oh, first,
okay.
I'm so sorry, we keep competing.
Hi. It was, both of you had equal enthusiasm.
It was great.
So Beth, do you want to introduce your partner from the
Yes.
TAC?
This is Alan English. Alan English has quite a good background in water. He's the hydrogeologist. He works at the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology. This is his second term on TAC. Did the one 10 years ago. And he also managed the local water quality district for Bozeman and Missoula. And the most famous person he's ever met is the most famous person I've ever met, and it's Jeff Bridges. Right? Did anybody else have that?
Nobody's a national treasure. right, Alan.
Play basketball pretty much.
Okay, I'm with Bess Boyson. She's representing the neighborhood council, and yeah, she already stole my thunder, so yeah, we both went with Jeff Bridges, so we've got that. And then your secret talent, again, was
Played a pretty good game of basketball.
basketball.
All right, next up.
All right, I'm with Joey, our mayor. His hidden talent is, he has the uncanny ability, which I really appreciated, to 6 years running, always be able to whatever, how did you say it? Whatever you're putting in a container is within just the minute. Tupperware master. Tupperware master, Tupperware wizard, so, which I think is amazing, and 6 years running.
Mr. Mayor, you're also the council liaison, correct?
Yes, I'm representing the commission here.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is Suzanne, is on the Public Advisory Committee and is one of our at-large community members, represented on the PAC. And similarly, was not Jeff Bridges, but another local celebrity that frequents a bar every now and then, or a restaurant. One, Batman, Michael Keaton, is the most famous person Suzanne has met.
Oh, and we had a like
Sarah.
a 3 situation.
This is Sarah Church, not on the WAC or the PAC, but is helping us out, a social scientist from MSU, so helping with some of the alternatives that we've been exploring that have come up in both conversations about how do we measure culture and cultural tolerance as a measure in our alternative calculations. And so he's representing MSU, but we're really glad to have her here.
And her secret talent is, although not so secret, because she's part of the Bozeman Symphony, she's a violinist.
Thank you. I didn't have to just anyone.
Who's next?
I can go.
All right.
Yeah. I got to meet Megan James this morning, who's on the PAC. She works at Montana State University and the Engineering Facilities Program, or I don't know if it's a program.
Yeah,
Ish. She's in charge of buildings, and they're representing PAC as a water user. And I appreciated, as an engineer, she said her hidden talent is showing up with a smile, which I think for an engineer is pretty good talent.
I started off with organization, but that's
Organization, too on point for an engineer.
And I had the pleasure of meeting Clayton this morning with Clouds Unlimited, and he is working with government affairs, water policy, etc. His hidden talent is much more exciting than mine. He is into curling.
Ooh.
Yeah, not just playing, but also traveling to just watch curling. So.
I want to, everybody watches curling in the Olympics, right?
I just was in Ogden, Utah this weekend watching the World Championship.
Oh, wow.
I got to watch Sweden.
The guns that you must build up.
Yeah, they were pretty buff dudes.
Who's next?
This is Danica Holmes. She's on the TAC, representing DNRC. Her most famous person she's met is Julianne Hough from Dancing with the Stars.
This is Brooke Lanneman. She's on the PAC and representing the Bozeman Sustainability Board and is a professor at MSU. Know that. Brooke's hidden talent is that she's a fast reader, confirmed by a fast reading test.
Thank you for doing your due diligence. Everybody can learn from Danica.
It's backed up. And it really, the con that comes with it is that she reads books too fast when she wants to read them for fun. Travel easy, I'd have.
Yeah, Kindle's your friend. Who's next?
This is Grant Scythe. He's representing the development community. His father was a carpenter here, builder here, and he is as well. He grew up here, so a Bozeman native. Probably the most important thing we can say about him is that he has a child on the way, so when the phone rings and he is up and out of here, we don't know why.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And,
Feel bad taking credit for my wife's talent, my talent.
Oh, just wait.
Yeah. And I guess the person that you'd like to meet is Bill Gates.
No, that happened.
Oh, you have met Bill
Yep.
Gates, okay.
Yep.
And he's on the PAC.
Yep, this is Tim Marsenko.
Yep.
Environmental engineer in town. He moved here in 1975, which my dad moved here in 76, so not many people dating back that far, so just wanted to catch up on that. Yeah, environmental engineer in town. Most famous person unsure of.
No, I think you're my talent.
What's your talent?
I can skate backwards.
That's right,
faster
yes,
than
yes.
I can skate
Yep.
forward.
Yeah.
All right, Holly.
Yeah, so I was partnered with Ben Holst, who's with Bozeman Health Facilities and a bunch of different departments there, sounds like. Let's see, Ben's most famous person that he met, and I've heard the name Jeff Bridges so many times now that that's the only name I have.
Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner, who he raced go-karts against at Deadwood. So.
You win?
Yeah, I did, of course. And this is Holly Hill with the Gallatin Watershed Council. She's a TAC member. She said her true secret power is her children, but she also plays the piano really well, but nobody knows that. So, 2 hidden talents.
I didn't miss anybody.
Becca is online. She's unable to make it in person. I'm not
Did you
sure.
interview her over IMs or anything, Jess?
Well, I messaged her to see if she could do an introduction. I'm not sure if she's ready for that. Becca, are you able to do that? It looks like you're muted.
Hey, Becca.
Hey there, do you have my audio?
We can hear you.
Awesome. I'm sorry, I don't even have a camera today. I'm not feeling the greatest, so I figured I'd keep everybody out of this loop I'm in here. I'm on the TAC, and did everybody give a little bit of background or just your hidden talents?
We'd love to hear a little bit of background.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, where you come from and who you represent.
Great. Yeah, I'm sorry not to be there in person. I work for Aggie, the Association of Gallatin Agricultural Irrigators. I have always, I've worked in agriculture here in the Southwest Montana for 15 plus years. And so I work to support the irrigation community currently. And let's see here. Gosh, I don't know of any hidden talents I have that I can speak of right now. Famous people, I once got to serve Dave Matthews a beer.
That beats anything that I would have. And I think one of your not so hidden talents anymore is trying to keep people from being sick. So thank you. Hope you feel better.
Thank you. Thank you.
So last time, I'm sorry. That's Griffin and Sean from the city. You guys know them.
Okay.
Do you want to just say hi and what you guys do?
Yeah, Sean Coates, Utilities Director for the City of Bozeman. Manage the water, wastewater, and sewer systems.
I'm Griffin Nielsen, Water Resource Engineer with the City of Bozeman.
And we may as well.
Sure, Zach Magdal, Water Resource Engineer for 82S, a consultant working on this project.
And my name is Matt Wittern. I'm foolishly in charge of facilitating these things and also helping out on the strategic communications and stakeholder engagement broader outside of the WAC here.
And good morning, I'm Jessica Alstrom. I'm the city's water conservation manager. Should we pass it to Sarah?
Yep.
Oh, well, they already introduced me.
Oh, yeah. I was trying to manage an online meeting. It's not my forte. I'm sorry. I missed that.
No, I jumped in on a team.
So it's been, last time we met was what, November? And a lot of time has passed, and we thought it'd be helpful for kind of doing a speed run through what we've done individually as individual committees, and then talk about what has been done in the interim with moving the process forward. So I'm going to run through, kind of just refresh everybody's memory of what we've done and what guidance has been given and what steps have been taken. I like to start these meetings with the end in mind, so you guys are going to have homework, okay? Your homework is going to be to look at the alternatives that are currently in a draft tier format in terms of viability, preference, these sorts of things, and state, and between now and our next meeting next month, identify any that you feel are mistiered, okay? So the first tier that we'll talk about, and we'll get into this later, are those that we think have a very good chance of being viable. The middle tier is kind of wishy-washy. The third tier we don't think has as much promise. And it's not that they will just go away. I think every water resource plan update is going to look at all these alternatives, see if things have changed. But essentially what we're saying is since there's finite resources, you may not spend, we may get your blessing to not spend a whole lot of time doing a thorough analysis of things that we don't think have a whole lot of promise. So be ready for that as your homework later on. And if as we move forward, we'll certainly be able to answer questions about all that. So everybody cool? Okay.
Real quick.
Yes.
Do any WAC members need a set of slides? Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
My clicker's not working. So first thing we want to do is just talk through some key terms. Is anybody willing to share your kind of view of what the integrated water resource plan is? Alan?
Well, effectively it's a 50-year plan, so it's looking at quite a ways, trying to look at what Bozeman's current water usage is and then predict future water needs in kind of various scales, and then evaluate alternatives to fill that gap, because there's definitely going to be a gap. So, assuming growth, and that's one of the things that's been talked about, is projecting growth rates along with that. So, just really kind of a 50-year sort of a facilities plan for water resources for the city of Bozeman.
That's good. We, I'll add on to that it guides the city's water policy and management by outlining alternatives to improve Bozeman's water supply resiliency. Reasonable? We had the technical advisory committee, so members of the benefit of the members of the TAC. The TAC was meant to provide expertise on water supply, environmental stewardship, engineering, agriculture, and resource management, more from a technical lens, right? We always said that the TAC was more of the the engineering science type things, and the PAC is more representing kind of the heart of the community, what it means unique to Bozeman. So the PAC represents community interests, neighborhood perspectives, business and development considerations, housing interests, and public engagement priorities. So those were just a quick reminder on those. So you, as a WAC, you're the Water Advisory Committee. Your responsibilities are the following: to bring perspectives that reflect the views and values of everybody's respective stakeholder groups, to provide input on integrated water resource plan concept alternatives, including policy and potential community impacts. And ultimately, our goal is to build a consensus with this group where you can go to the City Commission and say, we studied these items in depth, we've considered this carefully, we recommend that the Commission adopt the Integrated Water Resource Plan update based on what staff and the project management team will present. So that's our end goal of this. So back in the day, use your time machine. The TAC and the PAC established the criteria to use to screen alternatives. So anybody want to, can anybody kind of define what the criteria for screening alternatives, the idea behind that? Anybody remember? Go work.
Criteria that would include diverse dimensions, including obviously environmental impacts, but also social impacts, economic impacts, to capture kind of all the different types of impacts that they might have.
That's great. So you have an alternative, which is an option, which is something to consider, a way to, a method by which to bring water to the Bozeman community. How are we going to evaluate that? How are we going to judge whether it's good or bad unless we have these criteria that are going to screen these different alternatives? So you recall each of you TAC in much greater detail, but we also shared with the PAC what the TAC had said about these concept alternatives. So each group reviewed and revised those alternatives that the project team had scored, right? And then the TAC, as was your role, shared additional priorities to consider. And then the project team conducted a community survey. So that community survey was done on Engage Bozeman. Does anybody on the committee remember seeing any of that go out for that? So what we have right here is, we'll talk more about that community survey a little bit later. So here, when you, just like Brooke had said, technical, environmental, social, economic, water supply, these are all the screening criteria that we're going to be using to evaluate whether an alternative is successful or not, right? Would be more viable than another one. So this was the results from the TAC screening criteria. I love the fact that this community, you both ranked environmental as the highest thing, both the technical and the PAC. So I'll flip to the next one here so you can see the PAC. You both said environmental is the most important thing. That's even higher than water supply, which doesn't happen everywhere. That's really cool. We thought it would be, for just a quick review, we set up a quick table here to just show where each group came down.
Is it stop working?
The whiteboard is like marking.
Okay, I'm sorry, a moment.
Maybe not.
Does it work now?
Yes. So these are the same numbers we're in that graph, the TAC, technical, environmental, social, economic, water policy. These are the same numbers. These are the TAC scores that were averaged, the PAC scores that were averaged. You can see here how close they are. And then when those two numbers are averaged together, what the figures are. So you scored pretty evenly on technical. Environmental was a little bit different, but still the highest. Social was identical. Economic was a little bit of a difference there, but not much. There's 18 in the middle. And then on water supply, you guys had the same answers. So what that tells me as a member of the project management team is that these two committees are fairly well aligned. So members of the PAC, you're welcome. You didn't have to do this. This was the weighting criteria that the technical advisory committee went through, right? So in November, TAC said, hey, we'd like to do an additional survey to rank priorities out of all these sub-criteria here, okay? So members ranked their top 10, and this ends up being the result here. Everyone placed watershed resiliency and ecosystem services somewhere in their top 10, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was everyone's number one, but it was for most of you on the TAC. O&M, climate resiliency, agricultural heritage, overall public support, and Clean Water Act compliance were also priorities among most TAC members. The box on the right is, I don't know, I probably could have put this a little bit differently and make more sense. which weren't selected, but for many of these, I think the TAC didn't select these because you wouldn't move forward on any alternative without them, you know? You're not gonna do anything that doesn't allow you to align with water treatment regulations or public health and safety, right? So those need to be baked into every successful alternative. So that's how all of this kind of shook out at a more granular level. And these results align pretty closely with TAC impact screening criteria results and the public survey. So let's talk a little bit about this. So the survey itself, just a quick note on this, from a data sciences perspective, I was impressed that there were 643 responses in the community, okay? That's the good news, okay? What's a little bit more sobering is that this is not a scientific or statistically significant survey, okay? The reason behind that is because if you have people self-select to take a survey, there's not a random distribution of the population. Because it's not randomized, you can't come up with an effective margin of error. Like you see political polls and they say, oh, plus or minus 3%, and we have a 95% confidence level that the results fall within this 3% of error bars. So I say this only to caution this group that we can't rely on this as a rock solid, scientifically and statistically significant survey. But the cool thing is that 643 of your neighbors took the survey, right? And so let's look and see what kind of the key findings coming out of that were. When it comes to, reliability is a real priority for folks in the community here. More than 90% said reliable water service as very important or important. So this was a ranking exercise. We asked folks to rank reliability, public safety, rec opportunities, economic development, agricultural support, equal benefit, and regional cooperation. So 68% of respondents ranked reliability as most important. And growth obviously is a very common focal point here, right? Respondents are concerned about the strain that development and growth place on existing water resources. So 83% rated responsible growth management as important or very important. I don't think anybody in the room is surprised about that. Conservation remains a priority. You guys have been doing an amazing job on conservation, and that's something that I think is really baked into the community's culture here. 70% rated irrigation water efficiency as very important, and 19% said it's important. This open-ended responses reinforced this sentiment. Respondents expressed interest in increased education on the topic and support for rebates and incentives to support conservation. Recreational opportunities are not the primary priority here, which for such an outdoorsy community was frankly a little bit of a surprise to me, but that's how it came out. So, rec opportunities tied to water supply alternatives should receive less emphasis. So half ranked new recreation is not important, and 29% said it's somewhat important. So 38% of respondents ranked recreation as least important, and 28% ranked it 6th out of 7. So less than 1% ranked it as their top priority. So we love the outdoors, we love recreating, but let's maybe be totally serious about our water supply. That's kind of how I read this one, right? So we talked a little bit about regional collaboration. There's some talk about maybe can we have some conversations with Belgrade? Can we have some conversations outside of the city proper? 36% said the city should pursue regional collaboration if it ensures reliability and availability across the region, even at additional cost or reduced efficiency. 30% said, pursue collaboration only if it reduces costs or improves efficiency, and 22% supported collaboration regardless of cost. This was the big one. Only 5% indicated that Bozeman should not pursue collaboration. So, seems to make sense to me. Do it if you can, if it makes sense, but What we've done is the bulk of the meeting right now is going to be asking you guys to drink out of a fire hose, because there's been some work done on concept alternatives, getting those organized, and weighing them. So all of this that's coming now is to introduce you and reintroduce you to the things that are going to be important as you do your homework this coming month. Okay, so if nobody has any questions or comments before we jump into kind of new material, yeah, Alan.
Just one comment on the survey. I think, you know, in terms of the way people rank the environmental factors, I think most people in Bozeman value that highly. It's just that we had to rank them relative to the other related issues. And so when you put it that way, it drops out. But I don't think it reflects that people don't care about it relative to others.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Are the full survey results available in the system?
Yes, those are going to be part coming up.
Okay.
All right, if you guys are feeling like in good shape, I'll turn it over to my friend Zach.
A couple things to just hit on again that Matt kind of covered, but want to make sure it's clear before we go into the alternatives is what we're presenting so far, as you hopefully remember, does not include conservation alternatives yet. Those are going to be presented by Jess in May and kind of evaluated separately. So we totally recognize that the community values conservation as priority, and we're not going to be discussing it today just because of the nature of the project, as how we're doing the project. Second thing is the city did the community survey, but that's not the only time that they're going to receive input from the community. And we'll get into that, but just wanted to remind you, set the stage before we dive into this stuff. So I'm going to walk through the alternatives and kind of the process we went through, and then the results of the tiers that we developed. Jess, do you want to add anything before I get into this?
I don't think so, because I know your first few slides are going to hit on what I want to say. I guess I'll just clarify that the conservation conversation may not happen in May, but it will be coming up sooner than later.
Okay. Okay, so first off, I'm just going to go over the kind of the categories of alternatives that we considered. Just hopefully you kind of remember some of these, but if not, that's okay. We'll go through them in detail as well. So first off, groundwater concepts. We looked at 5 different groundwater concepts. The city is currently pursuing this. They have been pursuing it for a while. At a study level, just investigating the feasibility of groundwater development in the valley for municipal use. Next category, I'm calling highlight reservoir dam concepts, things that are looking to expand or improve or optimize the use of highlight reservoir. Next category is import concepts, so just 2 concepts that would be looking at importing water from a different area. Next category is non-potable concepts. So this is specifically looking at using other irrigation water rights in the community for non-potable use, rather than municipal supply for non-potable applications. Resiliency concepts, we saw in the community survey that resiliency is also a high priority for the community. There's 5 concept alternatives that we're categorizing as resiliency focused. I'll walk through those. Sourdough storage, so hopefully you all remember there was a reservoir in Sourdough many years ago, in the 50s, and was used for municipal use. That obviously is not there anymore due to concerns about fault line, it being near a fault line. But the city still has water rights associated with that storage reservoir. So these concepts are looking at using that storage in different ways. Water rights concepts, this is just looking at acquiring additional water rights in the valley for municipal application. Wastewater reuse, 6 of those, reusing the wastewater treatment plant effluent for either potable or non-potable applications. And then finally, just the catch-all miscellaneous things. It includes stormwater reuse, rainwater capture, ditch improvements, canal impoundments, and I'll walk through each one. Okay, screening process. You've both groups have seen this this process before, but I'm presenting again to remind everybody where we're at, how this worked. So we started with more than 40 alternatives. It's the world of alternatives, and we kind of did just simply a water rights legal feasibility assessment. Water rights are obviously challenging in the valley. I think we've talked about that a lot, so I'm not going to go into detail there, but we basically assigned a red, yellow, green for each of the world of alternatives on how feasible it is just purely from a water rights standpoint. What was red was taken out, and what was green and yellow moved to the next level of screening, which so now we're at those 40 alternatives moved to the next level of screening. We used the criteria that you all ranked and sub-criteria to do a qualitative ranking assessment, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. The next step, so after May, we will take the alternatives that rose to the top. What we're proposing is the tier 1 and tier 2 alternatives to do a very in-depth engineering study to assign costs and water supply yield for each of those alternatives. And then use those to develop basically recommendation for the IWRP, bring that to you guys again for discussion, bring it to the public again for discussion before anything is presented to the commission. I think I probably just gave more than I need.
Makes sense, I suppose. We've been struggling with kind of how to keep everybody coming along with this, and giving you a look downrange a little bit. So that's kind of the very rough game plan for the rest of the WAC's existence here.
I might, just because this is kind of what I just talked about, I might actually present this slide first. So this is more detailed of what I just talked through. So we are here. By the end of your term, we will be somewhere in here before bringing it to the commission. So our point in showing this is there's a lot more input to be given, and there's a lot more study and a lot more detail to be put toward all of this. So, so we're here. We're moving into here shortly. If we go back into so step 2 of this process is the qualitative assessment. Using that screening criteria, what it is. So just to be clear, I put some definitions of what it is and what it isn't. It's a planning level comparison tool to identify patterns and priorities, and step 1 of a long process. What it is not, it's not a decision, it's not a final recommendation, it is not precise. So although we assigned 1, 2, or 3 for each sub-criteria, those are relative to other alternatives, so it's not a precise science. like I said, it's not the last chance for y'all to provide input and the public to provide input as well. So how we did it was the consulting team, which I'll remind you is AE2S as the lead, that's my firm. And then we have two sub-consultants, Jacobs, which is an international engineering firm that works on these projects across the globe, literally. And WGM Group, another local firm providing water rights expertise. So those three firms scored each alternative, one for each sub-criteria, 1, 2, or 3, for the technical, environmental, water supply, and economic categories. And then we also had Sarah Church, social science professor at Montana State University, do the social ranking, social scoring, which she completed after the community survey was completed. Sarah, do you want to just talk a little bit about kind of your process? And
yeah, so I took the data from the survey and just overall perceptions and tried to rank those social criteria. I ranked it in terms of what the public feels like, the perceptions of these, what I think they would perceive the alternatives, rather than maybe what the science might say at some point after we do all the studies, to really get at the public sentiment that I was seeing from the survey. And also just like dialogue in the community. I work on water, read the paper, and that sort of thing. Is that?
yeah, that's great. Yeah. So then we combine that to come up with the overall ranking for the alternatives. While that was happening, city staff also did their own kind of qualitative assessment of all the alternatives. And rather than scoring them individually and ranking them one by one, they grouped them into tiers, which is what we're presenting to you today. Tier 1 being kind of priorities, projects maybe that they're already working on, they've already invested in. Tier 2 are still valid projects that they're interested in, but maybe have a longer timeline, need more study to understand the benefits of, the costs of. And then Tier 3 projects are also still valid projects, but the city doesn't feel like they're worth the squeeze right now. The benefit may not be equivalent to the cost. And we'll talk about each of those. And again, just repeating what Matt said, your homework when you come back in May will be to provide us input, provide the city input on if any of the alternatives should move from tiers, should move within each tier to a different tier. So takeaways from the consulting team / Sarah and MSU doing the scoring. I don't think any of these are surprising, and they kind of align with the community survey. They align, I think, with the general community. So stronger concepts were those that prioritize optimization and resiliency. Obviously minimize environmental impact or enhance ecosystem services, and provide the city flexibility. Weaker concepts were low return on investment, lower public support or perceived public support, and those with complex permitting. Okay. So now we're going to walk through 40 alternatives.
Are you setting your timer?
No, I'm checking on live. Should we keep rolling?
Yeah, lunch will be here in about 15 minutes, so
Okay.
I can probably get through some of this, yeah.
Okay. I also had a graphic kind of showing like the engineering life cycle of project development, and we removed it because it is complex, but the purpose of showing it is, of me wanting to show it is that we're like not even at zero yet with these alternatives. Like they're concept alternatives that need to be studied a lot more to define how they're implemented. They're not projects necessarily, they're concepts. So this, although there are 40, or because there are 40, we're not going to go through each of them in detail right now. Yeah, Tim.
Just even looking at like the first one, HY2, the highlight share purchasing, you said they're concepts, but the reality is some of these are already in progress, so they are being done.
Some of
they're
them
not purely only concept, they're just kind of a mix of that.
Yep, absolutely. Some of them are, like I said, the city's already pursuing them, have been conceived in the previous IWRP or even before that, have been studied some already. So yes, you're absolutely right, but not all of them.
And I think as we talk through these, we're going through all 40 just to remind everyone of what these really are, because it's been so long since we've kind of discussed this alternative. It, is this sort of description. So I think as we go through that too, it'll become clear like which ones are sort of already being pursued, right? We have a handful of groundwater alternatives that in some way, shape, or form are already part of our groundwater project. So we'll kind of get into that as we get into this descriptions.
Okay, so these are the tier 1 projects first. So highlight reservoir share purchasing, pretty straightforward, city's already doing it, seeks to do it, expand their share of the highlight reservoir. Highlight reservoir optimization. City is also pursuing this one already. They don't have it well defined, but there's a CIP, capital improvements project, already on their plan for pursuing this to optimize the releases at Highlight Reservoir.
Just a quick question on that one. Just looking at the description, that's not looking at raising the dam, or?
It's not looking at raising the dam.
There's a concept that does.
There is
You'll see that later.
Yeah,
Highlight reservoir dredging. So we put in parentheses study. This isn't suggesting that we're going and dredging next week. This is to understand the benefits and costs. I don't think it's well understood how much sedimentation there has been in Highlight Reservoir. To my knowledge, there's never been any bathymetry survey since the improvements completed in the 90s. And even then, I don't know if there was. Probably, certainly around the dam itself, but the whole thing. So this is more to, the reason this is a tier 1 is the city wants to better understand it.
Was this something that members of this committee suggested? Or is there, am I not?
Shout out Griffin, I think it was
Okay.
Griffin
Okay.
who suggested this one.
Can you remind us of what it would take to actually get that data? To know what the
Phase 2, we'll tell you in 6 months. What it would take, like cost-wise?
Yeah, I mean, just, technology and cost, I mean, are there alternatives to do it, and
there's
kind of what a range is?
Great question. There are unmanned boat survey things that can use sonar to do bathymetry, which may be something the city wants to pursue. It may not be. Maybe a study, a sediment transport study is something they want to pursue. Throughout the West, obviously, we rely on reservoirs for water supply, and routine dredging is pretty common practice. And not to say that it's needed in Highlight, but I think just better understanding it is the purpose of the study that we'll do for the IWRP. So I don't have costs for you, but it's not an enormous cost at all.
I just wasn't sure even like what technology is out there with regards to, you were saying unmanned. I mean, I don't know if you're something that would be on a boat going back and forth, or if it's just a drone that can go ahead and get the info, and would you be able to get how much sediment is actually there versus knowing to what level is solid?
So no, I mean, there may be that technology as well. I'm not a surveyor, but no, I'm talking about measuring the depth to the bottom of the reservoir, which would be the sediment, and comparing that to what was there before, what was actually original.
Okay.
To get an accumulation of sediment.
So we have
and a loss of
that much info with regard to what the original rock
yeah,
basin was.
There's DNRC has some record runs and potentially some survey that we can use to compare current conditions to previous.
Thanks.
Highlight reservoir dam acquisition. So again, the city feels this is something they want to better understand. It isn't an alternative that automatically increases water supply, but it is something that may accompany some of the other highlight projects to make them a little bit easier, to streamline operations, to streamline improvements to the dam. So currently the dam's owned by DNRC, and this alternative would seek to basically take over ownership of that. I will point out that in Sarah and our scoring of this alternative didn't rise to the top, and I think that's solely because it doesn't have a lot of water supply associated with it. I think it ranks pretty poorly in terms of water supply and like bang for the buck. But the city still thinks it's an important alternative to pursue, given the doors it may open and associated with other projects at the dam. Yeah, Clayton.
A question related to this topic would be amongst, I'm trying to think the right way to ask this, but ultimately, like, there could be a decision by the state legislature or the DNRC or somebody that says, we don't want to own this thing anymore, period, and either the city's going to acquire it or somebody else is going to acquire it, or we're going to get rid of it. How is that risk built into the other, because it ultimately is not just the city's call of whether or not they own that reservoir. There are many other factors in play, and I was just maybe curious of that risk, the other side of this being the risk of this not being owned by DNRC anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the primary question the city needs to ask is, what risk are they taking on with that? And I think we'll kind of look at that a little bit, mostly from a cost standpoint, but also from a defining risk.
Yeah, absolutely, because I mean, it's not an irrational, I deal with a lot of state water projects, and it's not an irrational behavior for every benefactor of those state water projects to say, we love this, but we don't want to own it because it comes with a lot of costs and liability and all of those sorts of things. And we love that the state subsidizes. I'm not poking at the city of Bozeman here. There are other state water projects that I am poking at, particularly one just to the west of here. But so it's not irrational to say we like the situation as is, but that does have risk, and I'm just wanting to think about what that risk is and the risk tolerance.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Sean and I'm not Sean, Sean's here, he can speak for himself, but I don't know if I want to have another massive piece of infrastructure to manage when I already have all this other stuff I have to manage.
Totally.
Yeah, I think what it does, it allows the city a little bit more leeway to do some of these projects that are listed. So, example of that, a simple one is basically to automate the valve at the reservoir, be able to say, okay, let's let that valve fluctuate to match exactly what our peaking demands throughout that day are. So, we've got a peak in the morning when people are taking showers and getting up out of bed, and then, again, when they return home in the evening. And if we could automate that valve and to basically just to release flows to match our demand curve throughout the day, that's great. You know, that really allows us to optimize the water use. Right now what we do is we call it the dam tender, and at best we can get the dam tender to basically turn that valve once every other day. So it gives you a sense that there's a lot of wasted water in that regard, so that we could optimize that. Now, I think, you know, the DNRC's challenge is just staffing, right? If you look at their, you know, even their current staffing levels, so many of their engineering positions are vacant. They just don't have the time to go up and you know, spend time on these projects, even do the bathymetry, for example. So I think, you know, there's definitely a capacity issue at DNRC to be able to do some of the just basic maintenance stuff. So I think, you know, a city acquisition of this would allow us certainly a lot more flexibility, and then we could bring our capacity and resources, you know, that we would be prioritizing from these projects to get those done.
Quick follow-up on that, Sean. Again, because I'm mostly familiar with other state water projects where the benefactors are asking the state to invest in the upgrade, which is different in the situation that the city of Bozeman could leverage resources to pay for the upgrades. But do you still get caught in the sort of same DNRC prioritization amongst their entire network of upgrades? So even though you're bringing the cash to the table, DNRC says we just don't have the staffing capacity because we've got engineering positions vacant, and we are prescribed to this order of proceedings in which we're going to go through state water project upgrades or maintenance. I mean, I'm dealing with this on Ruby Reservoir, where we are not bringing necessarily all the cash to the table, some, but there's the response is, that's great, you could bring all the cash, but you're still 15th in line.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And we're running into that exact same scenario. Some of our capital plan items, like that valve, for example, you know, we've had that discussion with the NRC and they've had that response. So really limited on capacity.
Yes.
At the engineering team at the NRC.
Working on fixing that, but yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, one other question. Obviously, the city isn't the only user on the dam. How does all this relate to all the other users? Like, do they pitch in on these projects also, or does it the city take the lead and just coordinate with all the other users from the dam?
Yeah, and I love that question. It's a complicated one.
Yeah.
You know, so basically it's the Middle Creek Water Users Association, which the city is a part of, that are all of the water users on the reservoir. And then, you know, the board members of the Water Users Association, of course, get a weigh in on the projects that happen, but ultimately it's the NRC that owns the project. So the NRC gets the final say. You know, that being said, you know, there's a question of, you know, the other water users when we want to do an upgrade like the valve, for example. Do they want to spend the money? Do they feel like they get the benefit out of that? Sometimes some will say yes, some will say no, and the ones that say no will say I don't want to pay for that. So then the question becomes, you know, city, is it worth the investment? If we're going to cover the whole cost, and yes, the Water Use Association also gets some benefit from that. That's a challenging conversation to have. But yeah, so it's yeah.
So just a quick programming note. We are 3 alternatives through the first 14 of 40. You guys get lunch when we're through the first tier, which is 11 more. And just want to keep us on time. I want to, of course, always balance the time for questions and information sharing with respect for everybody's time that you've dedicated to being here. So.
I know I'm
keep the party going,
there, but this just ties in. So based on what Clayton is saying, that if you wanted to go ahead and raise the level of the dam, that's just like the valve, automating the valve, it's just a request to DNRC. They have to then review it, and it's low on their priority. So increasing the volume of the dam is also in that same category, which can be circumvented if you actually purchase the dam.
Yes, although I think you'd also be talking to the Forest Service, you know, in that.
Yes, yeah. But you're taking DNRC and their priority rating out of the picture to the purchase.
Largely. large enough. Yeah. The exception of the water rights side of it, you're still engaging with the NRC on the water rights element.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, next one is also highlight reservoir associated alternative. Looking at the conveyance loss, so all users on the reservoir are assessed a 20% loss factor to account for losses in the system and the belief or perception that there's a that highlight is a losing stream between the dam and the valley. So this would automatically, if this were eliminated, this would automatically increase the city's storage by, what is it, 1,200 acre feet or something like that. This also is a kind of, at this point, just a study, and would be lots of negotiations with many entities. Moving along, groundwater development within city planning boundary. Like Jess said, the city's already working on this. They have been for a while. They are seeking to better understand the viability, the feasibility of this. Working with another consulting group right now to establish a groundwater supply for the city. Any new groundwater development would require mitigation, and many of these alternatives that are presented are kind of mitigation-specific alternatives that would be combined in tandem with a groundwater alternative. Non-potable irrigation for new development and common spaces. So this is specifically repurposing ag rights that either the city doesn't currently have or may have to use for new development, irrigating of new development, open spaces.
And the thought here is that as properties annex in and they have water rights that are pertinent to that property, that there could be opportunities to try to transfer that, since that water is already being used in that location, that it could be continued to be used, for irrigation in that same spot, in that same place, basically.
Valley storage for groundwater mitigation, managed aquifer recharge. So this is looking at using kind of local storage to recharge the groundwater. Again, this is more of a mitigation effort, which would seek to offset the losses of extracting groundwater. So sourdough, the Mystic Lake right I was referring to previously, the right up that used to be associated with the historical reservoir. This alternative is using some of that or all of that to store in the ground and then extract later for use. So aquifer storage and recovery is different than managed aquifer recharge. Managed aquifer recharge is a mitigation strategy or mitigating groundwater development. ASR is literally putting water in the ground, taking it out later. Lyman utilization. This is just, so 2016 or 17, the city made some infrastructure upgrades on their Lyman system to optimize its use. This is kind of just continuing that. Some of that infrastructure is outdated, needs replacement. They're actually looking at replacing or repairing the storage tank on Lyman right now. So this is just strategies that continue to optimize the use of Lyman. Drought reserve. This is also recommended in the previous IWRP, a lot of these are, and also in the city's drought management plan. Hasn't been implemented yet. But this would be to set aside a portion of, say, Highlight Reservoir or existing supply in the case of a drought. So this is not creating new supply. This is more of a resiliency alternative that the city thinks is still a priority. So we're still on tier 1 concepts. Sourdough naturalized storage. This was discussed a lot in both the TAC and the PAC. Looking at things like beaver dam analogs and other restoration type activities to increase the sponginess of the sourdough drainage and store water and use that Mystic Lake historical water right for that. Water rights acquisition, cities currently doing this, they seek to continue to do it basically as land is developed, acquire and convert those rights to municipal use. So this is reuse of worth effluent for managed aquifer recharge. So this would be a strategy to offset the extraction of groundwater, and specifically looking at using worth effluent to recharge groundwater. Again, the city's just in preliminary stages of investigating this with their groundwater project that they're currently working on. Again, I realize I went through these quickly. We don't have a ton of time, and I didn't get into detail, which is challenging, I know, as you're trying to evaluate them. So are there any questions before lunch? Yeah.
I guess if we have like tweaks to any of these or just other like nuances we should look into within each one, how should we bring those up?
So I think that, great question. I think that your homework between now and May is to decide which of these should either move out of it or new ones move into tier 1. I think during that process, we would love your comments and suggestions.
And our hope is, I don't want to speak too soon, but at this point our hope is that May's agenda will be time to discuss your rankings, right? Tier movement, however you want to say that. So there will be more time in May to discuss these alternatives after you all, go home, think about them more, and potentially come back with questions as well.
All right, well, everybody's hungry. And if you're not, you should be. I feel like we should take 5 minutes for everybody to run in and grab the box lunch and a soda and do regulate your fluid levels necessary.
Floodplain reconnection, forest management, stream bank stabilization to enhance runoff retention and water yield. So these projects must clearly demonstrate that they will expand the city's water supply in order to use funding sources that the city relies on. Thank you for adding that, because that is one topic I wanted to hit on today. So this is an important thing to remember in general for the IWRP. The watershed that we get water from is not city land. So they don't have authorization to do projects like this without partnering with other entities, i.e. the Forest Service. They also can't use public funds to do water supply projects without showing that we actually are increasing water supply. Sean can speak to that more eloquently than I just did, but I think you all get the concept. Do you need more explanation on that?
I might talk to that briefly.
Sure.
And that is to say, basically state law says that our water utility dollars can only be spent on elements that support the water utility directly. So, for example, we couldn't use our water bill funds to support the fire department. So, you know, and to translate that into the water picture here, you know, if we were to say go out and plant willows on the side of the East Gallatin, we wouldn't be able to spend our water dollars on that because the state law doesn't allow us to do that. Now, another project that we've looked at that's more on this naturalized concept is if we were to do the Beaver Dam analog impoundments down the sourdough drainage and then slow down the water and make that more of a resilient water source for us, where that water's coming off the drainage much more slowly and last longer into the season, I think there's a very strong argument that we can use water utility dollars for that kind of a project. So that's just my caveat. I can't use those utility dollars for everything out there, but that's something we certainly can.
Cloud seeding. I want to be clear that this would not be a city initiative. This would need to involve many other entities and probably a state-led project. And this is not unprecedented. Colorado, Utah, California, they all have been doing cloud seeding for decades. So the city seeks to better understand the benefits of that and costs. Utility interconnect. This would be a kind of more of a resiliency project, not necessarily new supply, but in an emergency situation, this would provide some relief valve to the city and to Belgrade. So literally physically making a connection in the distribution system with Belgrade and Bozeman. Tier 2 trapped sourdough traditional storage. So this has been studied a lot and continues to be something that the city is interested in understanding the benefits and costs of this, is to build an actual traditional reservoir in the sourdough drainage.
I think there's a question over here.
Sorry, just a quick question, Zach. Is the order in which you're presenting these significant?
Good question. No.
It's not by ranking?
Nope.
Wasn't it determined that this wasn't really feasible for a single, but that we talked about that multiple small ones was?
That is also a separate alternative.
Oh.
And to be honest, the outcome of studying this further may be that alternative proves to be more viable.
Okay.
Yeah.
The conclusion I thought that there was that you can't go ahead and rebuild Solid or Mystic Dam where it was.
Correct.
But so this is kind of talking about looking at, is there another place to build a Mystic Dam?
Correct.
Okay.
So same thing, just looking at multiple smaller dams within the drainage. Canyon Ferry, Missouri River import. This is by far the largest source of municipal water of any of these alternatives. There's 300,000 acre feet in Canyon Ferry that is specifically set up for municipal use. Now, of course, the city recognizes that this type of project is extremely controversial and extremely large and would take decades. But in terms of just purely talking water supply, it is by far the largest source of water available.
I don't see that on this table.
Up top, second one down.
Oh, okay, I was going down. It's following this way.
Water marketing. think Becca talked about the Gallatin Water Trust, and there's some momentum there, setting up a water banking system where farmers and irrigators would sell their or lease their water rights to other users in the valley. It's a concept that the city is interested in pursuing. Direct potable reuse of WRF effluent. So treating wastewater effluent beyond what it's already been treated for, and redistributing into the potable system. WRF effluent for groundwater recharge. So this is managed aquifer recharge, could be used for groundwater mitigation. Similar, but like I said, ASR, aquifer storage and recovery, is injecting the water into the ground and then pulling it back out later to reuse for, in this case, potable reuse, I believe. But it could also be used for non-pot. Okay, those are the tier 2 concepts. Moving into tier 3, just reminding everyone that these are still valid alternatives. They're just, the city is proposing to not look at them in detail at this time. We haven't exactly conceived what the end product of this whole thing will be, other than it's going to be a report. I imagine that report will include all of the work we've been doing since June, and the future work, and it will include all of these alternatives as well. It just will not include as much, we propose that they will not include as much detail about them. Make sense? So snow fencing, develop passive or active strategies to collect snow within our drainages, as many reservoirs, reducing evaporation, sublimation, and extending snow melt. More of a resiliency project.
This requires that we have winter and we get snow.
Why is it in tier 3?
Rainwater capture and temporarily store rainwater for distribution and non-potable reuse. A very valid and logical alternative, although not legal currently.
Oh.
Same thing, capture and temporarily store stormwater for distribution and non-potable reuse. I think we heard loud and clear from multiple entities and the community that WRF effluent reuse for irrigators is not a priority. It's not something that would be perceived as strong. Water reclamation reuse for industrial users, also very logical. It's not a large industrial user in the valley that would apply for this project. Setting up a citywide utility to distribute effluent for irrigation. Also a valid alternative and concept, but fairly expensive and disruptive, and potentially not the benefit doesn't equal the cost for this one. Salvage water, work with irrigators in the valley to implement water saving measures to convert the savings to municipal supply. I think the thought here, why it's a tier 3, is there's not a lot of more optimization of irrigation in the valley to be had. So not a huge benefit here. Also, tier 3 is ditch improvements. As probably you all know, The ditches also act as groundwater recharge mechanisms, which is an important asset to the valley. And we've heard loud and clear from multiple entities again that this alternative is not seen favorably and may impact habitat, wetland habitat, and all sorts of things in the valley. So that's why this is a tier 3 project. I think that's the, nope. Citywide utility, non-potable, same concept as the WRF citywide utility, WRF effluent citywide utility, but this would use irrigation water rights for irrigation of municipal land. The thought here is that building a whole secondary system, a whole non-potable utility is very expensive and challenging. And the city would prefer to put their money toward targeted applications like they already do. Tier 3 adjacent drainage development and import. So this was looking at basically any other import from within the valley, Bear Canyon, Rapid Creek. Tier 3 not a priority. So that's all 40. Next steps, I'll take a stab at this, and I think the city and Matt will probably chime in here. You have a list of all the alternatives, the 40 alternatives, and grouped into tiers. You also have a table with color gradients, heat gradients, showing the results of the screening that Sarah and the consulting team completed. Green obviously is stronger, red is weaker, yellow is somewhere in the middle. And this is meant to just provide some, like we said in the beginning, just relative pros and cons compared to the other alternatives. Your homework is to review this and let the city know if there are any projects within any of these tiers that you think should shift to a different tier. Say that?
Could you reiterate, excuse me, kind of the concept behind the tiers again?
Can you guys reiterate? You did. I mean, tier 1 is priority, some stuff that the city may already be looking at, has already invested in and seeks to continue investing in. Tier 2 are alternatives that may have promise, but aren't well understood yet. And the purpose of this integrated water resources plan is to start to better understand that. And tier 3 projects are also projects that are important to the city and important to the community, but may not be, at this time, may not be high priority for the city to pursue. But will still be included, I think, in the report as we, yeah, Alan.
So I can see what you're doing here, but the one thing that jumps out at me is that in that upper, in that upper section, you know, the more favorable green to yellowish green, there's actually several tier 3s that fall into that. So, I mean, I just looked at it, it looks like there's a little bit of a disconnect between having it put in tier 3 and then looking at all those 5 criteria and scoring it and then scoring high. So it's just,
yeah,
just a question as to if you could address that a little bit, I guess, more than anything else.
Yeah, I'll let the city speak to that too, but just walking through kind of the outliers, if you will, pointing out the ones that may have scored higher or lower compared to the tiering that they were assigned. So starting, if you go down to R5, snow fencing mounding, you can see that environmentally and socially, very high scores. It's a resiliency project. There's little impact to the environment. It fits in the kind of the Bozeman spirit of Bozeman, but it's not a reliable water supply improvement project. It gets a very low water supply score. That's still a valid project, something that the city may consider in the future. But given that its lack of improvement to water supply, we feel it's a tier 3 project. Moving down to the next 2 3s that are kind of middle, the rainwater capture and stormwater storage also scored really highly in environmental and social, and then relatively poorly in technical and water supply. Again, like I said, currently under state legislation, it's actually not allowed to do that, and the investment the city would need to make to use these concept alternatives isn't worth the squeeze at this time. In the future, maybe things are different. In 5 years or 10 years, when we do this IWRP process again, those projects or those concepts may rise higher. And then, kind of opposite of what you pointed out, Alan, there are some that scored low but are tier 1. Highlight reservoir dredging, HY4. I think it scored low because there's not a lot of an assumed or perceived not a lot of water supply to be gained from dredging highlight reservoir. But it also doesn't cost a lot for the city to better understand that. And so I think that's why it rose to the top for the city. It's a pretty small investment to see if that's something worth exploring further. HY1, similar, the highlight dam acquisition. The consulting team scored it low because it doesn't provide a lot of water supply. It doesn't provide any water supply, right? It may help them optimize, but they already have a project to look at optimization. But the city still kind of wants to pursue this and explore this concept as they look to make improvements, like Sean talked about, as they look to make improvements on the valve and controls at the dam. There is a long project timeline for that currently, and future projects, who knows what those might be, might be streamlined if the city acquired the actual infrastructure up there.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. And then, so 2 follow-ups. One, looking at your shading of colors broken into the groups, was behind this, is there some scoring or ranking in each of these categories that's built in? In other words, they're not just green or yellow, they're shades of green.
Yeah, so like we said that, so we assigned 1, 2, or 3. The consulting team did to the technical, environmental, economic, and water supply, and then Sarah did the same process for the social to come up with a score. We use your weightings of the sub-criteria to come out with the overall score. So yes, however, like I said, this is not precise. We use this as a tool to help understand general relative pros and cons. And the next step will be to take those tier 1 and tier 2 projects and assign cost and supply yield to really do like a more quantitative assessment and really come up with benefits.
Yeah, I mean, I just was wanting to make sure I understood it. I'm not trying to criticize it or anything. I just wanted to make sure I kind of understood it helps.
Yeah, I guess maybe if I sounded defensive, we were debating a lot, like the point of this isn't to get into the weeds on like, is this 1, is this 2, is this 3? It's really just to see general trends. So I concur, my engineering brain is like, wait, that should be.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of based on how this shakes out, it does appear that in a way water supply is got a little bit heavier weight, maybe subconsciously, I don't know, but that's a big factor obviously. So some of the ones that wash out because they're not really gonna do much for water makes total sense to me, so.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a follow-up question is the city made their tiers independent of the scoring that you all did? Or if it was kind of a win?
Yeah, so the way that it worked, so both the consultant team and the city used the criteria that were developed in their kind of respective analyses. The city, basically the city's water resource team did kind of, well, we didn't rank them 1 to 3. We went through some numerical exercise very similar to what A2S is describing, where each sub-criterion had a number, but wanted to also have kind of a more conceptual conversation. So we all independently looked through all the projects, sort of ranked them in our own way, thinking about the benefits and then the challenges associated with them through the lens of those criteria. And then all came together internally, so all city staff, to kind of discuss the rankings, and then in that conversation determined that a better approach would be for us to put them in tiers, because there are so many that could be a high priority, and some, as Zach said, in this tier 2 that might work out really well if this and that, but we aren't to that point yet. So rather than the city doing their own 1 through 40, we thought it made more sense to do the tiers, which is why you will see some discrepancy in like the city of Bozeman tier versus the A2S numerical ranking, which Zach just talked through. So, yeah.
So much of this stuff is single data points, right? And it's subjective because there are human opinions in the mix. When putting the meeting together, I struggle as a non-technical person to kind of sort out all these different data points and inputs that we're giving you. And so I can imagine there may be some people in this room who are in the same position as I am. It's like, ooh, that's, you know, I wish I could make this simpler. I wish I could break it down for you. And there's also a natural kind of push-pull with stakeholder groups like this, because we, as the project management team, need to kind of pull you along with us, right? Make sure, have meetings like this, have people nod their heads, yeah, we can continue going on, that makes sense. And then there's other times when we're going to be asking you to kind of to push and say, I think that I feel like that alternative makes a lot more sense than you guys have put it at. I think you should dedicate more time and resources than you're planning to, or than you propose to be able to study this more. So my whole life is trying to, everyone's life, in particular these things, my whole life is balance, right? And it's important to balance here too, because we have two audiences that we're merging into one right now. We have a very technical audience, and we have a non-technical audience of people like me. So trying to find the balance and thread the needle between deluging folks with data that I know I wouldn't be able to understand, sitting in their chairs, and being complete enough to satisfy technical people in the room who want a bunch of quantitative figures. I'll be honest, we're feeling our way, So, like we had talked about before, homework is to try to absorb this, to identify conceptual alternatives that are in a tier that you feel like deserve less emphasis or more emphasis. We'll ask you to bring that opinion to the next meeting. Can I proceed with the conversation that Tim?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Tim pulled Jess and I aside during the lunch break, I think had some really good ideas that I propose that we move forward with. And Tim, help me out if I misconstrue anything. You know, another thing that we balance is time and the respect for your time, and knowing we don't want to rush through things that would take 3 hours and 2 hours and make people feel like they didn't get to have the conversation. At the same time, we don't want to give too much time and feel like you've been wasting your time, right? So I think we're always trying to find that balance. So one thing that Tim recommended is, you know, there could be some questions that WAC members have in the interim that we could answer in writing, right? You could submit them, say, something didn't make sense at the meeting, can you clarify this? We can provide those answers in writing, which would be shared evenly with the entire group, and then everybody could be on the same page. Of course, follow-up questions at the next meeting, welcome. So we would like to invite folks to do that, and I will provide in the meeting summary that we send out via email, we'll provide a mechanism for that to happen. And then there's, you know, we want to be sure that we preserve enough time for really the deep dialogue around areas where we have a slight disagreement, where we're a little bit out of kilter. The things that we all have consensus on, that yeah, that absolutely belongs in tier 1, or yeah, that definitely belongs in tier 3. I feel like we don't have to talk about that very much, right? So I would like to put my teams to work to try to find a mechanism where we, in the interim, we can find those consensus items and just let you all know coming in, we have consensus about these and where they position on the in the tiers. And so, of course, you're welcome to bring it up and have the conversation, but we will plan on not spending any time on those consensus items, which would open up far more time for us to have those in-depth discussions on the items where we feel like deserve to be moved or that sort of thing. I see nodding heads. Yeah, Alan.
Well, I think a healthy way to look at it is that, you know, we're looking at a 50-year plan, which is a long period of time. And so, you know, at the moment, I mean, a lot of things in tier 1, they're there because they're close at hand, or we're already doing them, things like that. But it doesn't mean that 10 years from now, a tier 3 idea might become the higher priority. So it's not, you know, it's not like they're going away if you don't.
It's not even really dead.
Right.
Yeah.
You can still pick it any time, so. But I think just keeping that in mind, there's a lot of change in 50 years.
And I'll reiterate the conceptual process, at least as I understand it. So what we're doing with the tiers is saying, A2S and your team, here are the priority projects we want you to spend your time analyzing in greater depth, okay? And then 3 or 4 months from now, we'll reconvene, and A2S will be saying, we studied this. Here are the ones that we recommend show up in the updated IWRP plan that we recommend taking to commission. Then that's another time for this group to weigh in and say, actually, I'm surprised that this alternative got such a low score. Can you talk more about that? Or, you know, how that would possibly score so high? So that'll be yet another time to provide input. And in the interim, we're going to be providing additional public information on the Engage Bozeman website. We'll be hosting some community events like open houses, public meetings, where we'll be out in the community talking about these alternatives and getting a sense of what your neighbors feel about things as well. So again, we're trying to gather as many data points as we can, but ultimately what we're doing right now, as Zach said, is we've been meeting a lot, but we're still at the beginning of the process. Yeah, Holly?
One quick question, I thought probably for the social scientists in the room, but for this idea, I like the idea of saving time in the meetings where we already have consensus not to focus there. But is there a case for having just enough time where our notes reflect why it feels like there's consensus, or the final report reflects that, so that we make sure we have the public support also and understanding about, I'm not sure if all of us are in consensus, and if that means the full community also is. I'm not sure.
Any thoughts from staff on
I think, I guess I'll go. I think that makes a lot of sense, Holly. I know, even just as staff, we've been tracking our reasonings for the tiers, like as it compares to the criteria. And I think as we continue as a WAC, working together through this and then including the public, I think it's going to be really important to be able to clearly convey the reasonings for any alternative to be high or low. And so I think that's a really big part of it, and that's a great suggestion.
Maybe it's just abbreviated, like just a very short.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tim.
The way you ended up listing the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 items that you went over, I feel there's a little bit of a disconnect between these. And my suggestion would be, if you were to redo this list according to how they ended up ranking, so that we could then see, knowing that this was, the highest level of green all the way down. Because I'm kind of, quite honestly, going back and forth, and it's not as efficient to be able to look at it, because what I'd like to do is to be able to say, these right at the very top on tier 1, they met the 5 criteria to the highest level, not having to go back and because they're kind of organized alphabetically, which is great to talk about them, but in my mind, we're trying to figure out this should be, these top 5, 6, 7 items should be those items that we already have total consensus on based on our criteria that we've already established. So that's how my brain works.
So if we did that, we'd break up the organized tiers. Then, because of the outliers, I'm just making sure that would still work. The other thing I should mention is we're going to provide an Excel sheet with all this, so you could do some sorting if you feel up for that and organize that way. But we're happy to adjust it however it makes sense for the whole group. If people would rather just work off of, kind of like this color gradient one, and then all the descriptions are there, and then you'll just have to pay attention to the tier, knowing, right, that the tier doesn't necessarily correlate to the color gradient rank.
I'm not sure I'm following you, because one thing that's confusing to me is you have the city of Bozeman tier. Is that corresponding to these tiers as well? Oh, okay.
Yes.
I wasn't following
Oh, yes, yeah.
initially at all. I thought that was just kind of another input.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you for that. We should clarify that. Yeah, the sheet you were just holding up is ranked by City of Bozeman tiers, whereas this is ranked with A2S's and Sarah's ranking, and then just our tier kind of noted just for context.
Well, then let me ask you this. The order in which these are laid out here, is this in the order of which the city had laid it out as far as they're most important?
No, just a set of tiers. So
okay.
Yep.
So again, I would just, suggestion to just go ahead and put these then in the order of how they were all scored based on 5 criteria.
Will that work for the group? And you'll just have to note that the tiers are mixed, so to speak, mixed together?
No. I'm still saying each tier is by itself.
Oh, I see.
And within the tier, they are ranked according to the 5 criteria.
Oh, yeah, we can add a column for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna recommend.
One thing to add on the tiered approach was, is that kind of alluded to early on, these aren't final recommendations, it's not the final ranking. This is just kind of the initial stage. So I think part of our thought of doing the tiered approach is it gets less into the minutia of where things ended up in this kind of first round. To help simplify it, knowing that we're going to go into further analysis, we'll have more information, and that we'll revisit kind of where projects land after we get that additional information. So I think the tiered approach was to help simplify it.
I'm sensitive to time. Everybody feeling awesome? So we'll, thank you for those suggestions, everyone. I think that is very helpful, and we'll work that into the process. And so we'll send out an email with kind of your homeworks and tasks. And of course, obviously, if there's ever a question or concern, we're available for a phone call or to answer those over email. And we'll also be soliciting those kind of specific questions from members of the committee that will consolidate, respond in writing, and send out to this committee well before the next meeting. It's possible that if I were in your shoes, I guess I would want that information before I even did my the homework exercise. So maybe we plan on that, having a deadline for the questions from the committee. We'll submit written responses and then turn you loose on your homework, which again is to point out any outliers and maybe identify anything that doesn't move. Maybe we agree that ends up being a consensus item. And Holly, to your point, we'll figure out a way to document that. So without objection, I think we can adjourn. I'm sorry?
When's the next meeting?
Oh, yeah. So does this time and day work well, terrible for people? Of course, getting so many people together on a schedule is difficult, but is this time of day on a Monday work well, good, bad?
It does for the first Monday of the month.
Okay.
I think we should give people more time than the first Monday of the month, so
Okay.
maybe we'll look at another day.
Okay.
It's funny you say that because I had on my mind this is going to be on Wednesday almost. The last night I looked at my calendar.
And it could.
It snuck up on me.
I did the same thing. I was like, wait a minute, no, it's always on Wednesday. Do I have the day right?
Generally, Wednesdays, 11 to 1, good, bad, indifferent.
Well, it was 11 to 2.
11 to 2, sorry. Okay, seeing no objections, we'll push for that. And look forward to seeing you all next month.
Did we pick a day?
A Wednesday. What do you want to call it, Jeff?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Which day in May would you like to meet?
My hesitation is finding a room, so if it's okay, I'd like to see what my options are for gathering space. And then email the group.
It won't be the first. It won't be the first
We
Wednesday.
won't do the first week, because I think there's.
Hold second, third, and fourth week tentatively, and then we'll get something definite as soon as we find space.
Yep. And then a quick point of clarification, Matt, for the homework. So we'll set a deadline for questions, which of course you can email more questions after if they come up, but trying to set a deadline for clarifications. And then, I'm sorry, could you clarify, at least for me, is part of it to also submit the requested tier moves in advance so that we can come into that prepared?
Yeah, my thought was that if I was a committee member, I might want to know the answers to those questions before I did the exercise of this belongs in a different tier. So I'd like to, if time permits, I think we'll try to shoot for that goal. Thanks everybody for your time. We really appreciate it. We know that there's many other things you can be doing during this time, and we appreciate your attention and your commitment to this process. So thanks everyone.
Jessica, you're going to send out an Excel version so that we can kind of review this in
Correct.
order of this.
Yes, and I'll add a column to that one you're holding with the ranks from the consultant team analysis.
Of this.
Yep, and there's 2 tabs in the Excel sheet. There's one with each of those, so you can look at it either way.
All right.
Yep.